Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to return to a brewery who do some very kind of interesting takes on traditional beer styles, mainly English and German, but we've got something that's even a little bit different from that today. So for this review we are going to return to Örebro and we're having a taste of yet another beer from the Närke Kulturbryggeri. This one is the Miklagård Brunmölska, which is described as a brown Nordic Braggot, coming in at 9.4%. Essentially this beer is a mead, but it's still got some of the malty and hoppy character that you would expect of a regular beer. So very curious to see how this one turns out. This brewery, as I mentioned, are mainly famous for their traditional German and English styles of beer, but really curious to see how this turns out because they do have a couple of different meads in their assortment, if you like. But this one was released on the 2nd of May 2019. It's one of the local and small assortment beers that we're getting through Systembolaget each month. So very curious to try this one, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this beer. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from the Närke Kulturbryggeri before. No doubt there will be some more in the near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about the Närke Kulturbryggeri then, on to my brewery notes quickly. So the Närke Kulturbryggeri are based in Örebro, as I mentioned earlier, out to the west of Stockholm, and they were founded back in 2003. But the two people behind the company are Håge Viktorsson and Berit Karlsson. So Håge Viktorsson had a career as a photographer and artist before he became a brewer. He was heavily into his home brewing actually, but Berit on the other hand is the CEO of the company, and she's also the chair of the Swedish Independent Brewers Association, the Sverige Oberoende Mikrobryggerier, to give it its Swedish name. But for a long time this brewery were only producing keg beer and distributing it to local restaurants and bars and stuff like this, but more recently they began to produce bottled beer as well, which really helped them grow substantially from their quite humble roots. But this came after they bought the brew kit and bottling machine of Närke Kulturbryggeri, one of the oldest craft breweries in Sweden incidentally. But the brewery currently produce around 100,000 litres of beer per year, and they're particularly famous for the Kagen Stormax port, which was rated as the world's best beer for quite a long time on Rate Beer, the peer reviewing site, which I've mentioned to you on quite a number of occasions. But the beer was first produced in 2004 as Stormax port, but later when they aged it in bourbon barrels it became known as the Kagen Stormax port, basically the kegged Stormax porter beer. So yeah, this brewery, they specialise particularly in English style traditional beers and also German beers. I've had the grandiose Doppelbock from them before, which was a little bit like a Maibock. I've also had the Örebro Bitter, which is quite a nice beer, but particularly this brewery's particular strength is the traditional English style beers and also the German style beers. I do hope that I can try their Dunkel beer at some point in the future, because that is a style that I really love actually. But they do have a fair couple of meads as well. There is one that's called Asgård, which is very highly rated, that's also a Braggot from what I understand. But yeah, a really interesting brewery this one that really sticks to the kind of traditional English and German styles of brewing, and if that's your sort of thing then have a go at them, because it's always cool to try these traditional styles brewed in different countries. You'll always get interesting interpretations of them. But yeah, that's all you really need to know about the Närke Kulturbryggeri. If you want to find out a little bit more, of course you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and that will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on at the brewery. So yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. As you can see with the artwork in this one, if you are familiar with this brewery, you'll realise that the artwork on these beers is fairly similar regardless of what beer you get. This sort of black background with the vanilla, almost the beigey vanilla kind of coloured label. This is the standard for what you get from Närke Kulturbryggeri. But Miklagård, the name for this beer comes from basically the Viking name for Constantinople or Istanbul, named at basically Miklagård was the old Christian capital of what is now Turkey, to be honest. But this one comes in at 9.3%, the Brunmölska. Basically, I'm not sure how exactly you would translate Mölska, but basically it's a nice brown beer, this one. I guess Mölska is probably the Swedish word for Nordic Braggot, but at 9.3%. I guess this one is a little bit light for a mead, but in terms of a beer it is a little bit of a beast. But you can see on here as well, this is the other thing, 2003 to 2018, celebrating their 15th anniversary. So yeah, nicely presented beer, this one. Plain bottle cap on this beer. It is a half-litre bottle and 9.3% Braggot, and this could, now that I think about it, actually be the first Braggot beer that I've reviewed for you on the channel. And you can see also that this beer says it's brewed with honey from Asker in Närke. I should probably tell you that as well. Närke is basically one of the old historic provinces of Sweden. If you think about Franconia in Germany, it's not an official state today, it's just that region in northern Bavaria. Närke, I guess, is the same, I think, to Södermanland, if I'm remembering the names of the counties properly up there. But yeah, really nicely presented beer, this one. So without further ado, let's get it out and into the glass. Oh, nice little bit of smoke on the opening there, and we'll stick a little bit of it in here. Yeah, I'm not sure if this one will get ahead or anything. Like I said, this may well be the first Braggot beer that I ever review for you on the channel. It could well be the only one that I ever review for you. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, it's poured a lovely kind of dark, I would describe that as a sort of more a mahogany colour, a stained mahogany colour, rather than a chestnutty colour. There's a half finger of a frothy, I would say, cream, slightly beige coloured head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and a few little ones just heading up towards the bottom of that head there. But you know, it has a lovely, it really does have a lovely colour to it, this lovely kind of dark, almost, it's not quite ruby, it's more of a chestnutty mahogany colour, this, rather than anything else. But when you open this beer up, you will smell some lovely brown sugar notes out of it. If I put my fingers behind the glass, I'm not sure how well you're going to see that, but this beer is actually pretty clear, but I think it's quite difficult to see that just because of the darkness in terms of colour with this beer. But you know, looks very, very nice. This is, like I say, the first Braggot that I've ever drunk, so this is a little bit of a learning experience for me. But this is the whole idea behind the YouTube channel, of course, is to learn new things about new styles of beer. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Not sure whether to say this is an appearance that you would expect from a mead. I think you can get them in all different colours, but let's have a look at that aroma and just see how we get on. Oh, now that's really interesting. So it's a very malty aroma, this, which is what you'd expect, but it does have an element of hoppiness to it as well. If they've used hops in this beer, I would suspect that they're English, because the earthiness in this one has that distinctive darker quality to it. There's a little bit of a herbal note in there, and it has that slightly darker floral and grassy note that you would expect from the English hops in comparison to the German ones. I've always found the German hops are quite nice and bright, whereas the English hops are just a little bit darker in their qualities, and they're also a little bit more herbal, to be honest with you. But in terms of the malty side of things, it's really quite a grainy smelling beer, this one. You've got a nice sort of brown bready note in there, but there's a lot of kind of treacle molasses qualities on top of that. You can smell a little bit of the lighter honey kind of thing going on as well. I always found that honey, to me, honey has always smelled as if it has a little bit of a biscuity quality to it. So you can pick up that sort of wafery, biscuity kind of thing out of this beer. There's a little bit of the darker kind of syrupy side of things, which is what you'd expect. So a little bit of a treacle molasses kind of thing. A little bit toasted as well, I would say. But you've also got some of the kind of sweeter, straight up caramel as well. So a hell of a lot of malty presence in there, but to me it does have a little bit of a kind of grainy, slightly bready backbone to it, which is something that I didn't quite expect to get out of this beer. But yeah, it surprises me as well how prominent the hops are in this one. There's a little touch of a fruity note, maybe a kind of sharper, I want to say it's raisins and sultanas that's coming out of this one, rather than figs and plums and stuff. It really has a little bit of a slightly sharp red fruity quality to it, this beer, but overall it really does lean towards the brown sugar side of things, which to be honest is what you would expect. But it's just interesting the level of complexity that you can get out of this beer, because it is a pretty unusual and quite unique style. So yeah, as I always say, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it, because this one has some really quite unusual and unique qualities, at least in my opinion. So let's have a taste of this beer then. This one is the Miklagård Brunmölska, a brown Nordic Braggot at 9.3% from the Närke Kulturbryggeri in Örebro, just out to the west of Stockholm here in Sweden. Let's have a taste of this and see how we get on. I believe this is the first Braggot that I've ever reviewed on the channel for you. So let's have a try. Slange Skål. Yeah. That's quite unusual, but quite nice, I have to say. Yeah. First off, you're going to notice the malty qualities of this beer. It really does, for me, have a sort of traditional English style base to it. In the middle of your palate, you're going to notice that it really is just taken over by the grainy aspects of the beer. This beer really does have a very grainy, almost dry backbone to it. On top of that, you start to get the brown sugars, but that graininess really does kind of linger there, and the further you go into the aftertaste, the more kind of prominent it becomes. It is actually quite nice, but this beer really is not as sweet as I was expecting it to be. So really you've got this nice kind of grainy backbone to the beer. It's almost a little bit like a kind of English bitter malt base, and as I've mentioned to you before, the English bitter is not my favourite style. I think the guys like Närke Kulturbryggeri and Untappd Brewery as well, with the Örebro bitter and the Braggot bitter, they're better at making bitters in my opinion than the English themselves are. But it really has that sort of English malt base to it. The graininess really pushes its way out the further that you go into the flavour with this one. There is an element of toasty quality to that as well. You can feel this beer, the backbone of it feels like it's a kind of well-fired bread crust, if that makes sense. If you've got these kind of fresh bread rolls, if you like, it really feels like the backbone of this beer is like a well-fired bread crust, to be honest. The bready elements in this beer are a little bit more like a kind of brown bready sort of thing. But you take a few more sips of this beer and I think it does start to sweeten up. In the middle of your palate you've got that nice brown sugary kind of note, and it's a good balance between a sort of more syrupy treacle molasses kind of thing. There is a little bit of a toasty element there, and you can feel that the further you go into the aftertaste, but the more that you move into the centre of the palate, the sweeter that it is. But definitely a kind of syrupy treacle note to this one, a lighter kind of caramelly note, and the further that you move out from the centre of your palate, you do also get a gradually growing biscuity quality to the beer as well. It's really just interesting how this goes together. I don't think I would have pictured a Braggot beer as being like this. It does have some kind of meady qualities to it, but it's quite a dark, syrupy mead, this one. But it does really, to me, if I tasted this beer blind, I would probably just think that it's a slightly more malty version of a bitter, something like that. It's interesting, but you can tell how boozy it is because of the levels of you know, treacle and molasses that you're getting out of the beer. Yeah, I have to admit, the more and more that you drink of this beer, the more it's going to grow on you. It does take your mouth a little bit of time to adjust to it, but it really is pretty nice, I have to say. I wouldn't hesitate to drink this beer again, but it's definitely one of these beers that is a little bit of a sipper because it takes you a bit of time just to fully appreciate what's going on here. It's very oily in terms of its mouthfeel. On the hoppy side of things then, in the back corners of the palate, there's a little bit of that earthiness there. As you come further forward from that, you've got a nice little touch of a kind of herbal quality. It evolves to be a little bit more floral and aromatic towards the front corners of the palate, and then round the very front curve of the tongue, you've just got that lighter sort of grassiness in there as well. And behind the front curve of the palate, you do get a little touch of a fruity quality out of the beer. And for me, it's very light. That it's a very light kind of candied, fruity note to the beer. There is a little teensy little bit of phenol in there that you can pick out the further that you go into the aftertaste. But really, you get almost this kind of slightly cakey note towards the front of this beer. It's almost like a little bit of a kind of alcoholic caramel fudge cake or something like that. So if you go towards that oily bubble behind the back curve of your, or the front curve of your tongue rather, the very back of it, you've just got this kind of cakey vibe about the beer. And as you let it progress on, it becomes a more kind of, it does have a little bit of a figgy element to it, but it evolves to be more of a little kind of candied strawberry note. It reminds me of these little heart-shaped sweets that you get in the Haribo Star Mix. It has that almost candied strawberry element to it, this beer, which is really quite nice. And I'm also getting, the more and more that I drink of this beer, if you just go to the sides of your tongue and then move in a little bit, there is an almost woody flavour coming out of this beer. And if you go to the very centre of your palate as well and move just a little bit further forward, you'll feel that there's a kind of nutty type flavour coming out of it too. It's definitely a beer that you have to kind of sip on and just enjoy for a little bit and just see how the flavours come out of it, because I've got a feeling that this beer, the more and more you drink of it, you will start to see more and more little subtleties just pushing their way out of it. But it's a nice beer, this one. In my opinion, it's almost like a very high alcohol but rather sweet English bitter. That's how this beer kind of strikes me. Just the way that the malt base comes out with that kind of bread crusty base to it. It's a very interesting one, this, and I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but just be aware with this, it has that kind of English edge to it, and you would always expect a Braggot, I think, to be just a little bit stronger. So yeah, to me it's a nice beer. I wouldn't hesitate to drink it again, but it is one of these ones that is a little bit of a treat, you know. I am going to share this half-litre bottle with my friends just now, but drinking a half-litre of this yourself would be some challenge, to be honest with you. So yeah, the flavour of the beer is nice, really a nice kind of dark, treacly molasses, kind of syrupy brown sugar note, this one. I'm not sure if I would equate this to a mead, because to me it's not quite suitable enough. It is more of a beer than it is a mead, so I think that's a fair statement to make. In terms of the mouthfeel then, yeah, I would describe this beer as being at the top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation is very smooth. It's actually got a very good balance between the wet side of a mouthfeel and the more oily side of the mouthfeel. You've got a little bit of hoppy bitterness out of this. I think we're talking somewhere in the region of 40 IBUs. Malt base it is really interesting. You've got that little roasty, grainy thing underneath, and then it has a more toasty brown sugar note on top of that, and I think it gets sweeter the further that you go into it as well. And you've also got some nice juicy fruity notes in there, but overall it's the roasty bread crust and the brown sugars, the toasty element of the brown sugars, that are kind of battling it out to be the forefront of the palate. But a really interesting beer, this one. Pardon me, I just took a little bit in the wrong way there. So have a go at this one for yourself and just see what you think. It's quite cool that we can get these type of beers as the local small releases at the first of every month. And it's been my first Braggot beer to review for you on the channel. So if you do have any other Braggot recommendations, let me know those in the comment section below. But these guys, of course, are one of the more well-known breweries when it comes to the traditional side of things here in Sweden. So let's leave it at that then. This one was the Miklagård Brunmölska brown Nordic Braggot at 9.3% from the Närke Kulturbryggeri in Örebro in Södermanland, if I'm remembering correctly, here in Sweden. A really interesting beer, this one, and it's been cool to review my first Braggot for you. Tomorrow you'll see review number 1700, which I'm sure all of you will enjoy. But thanks again for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from the Närke Kulturbryggeri as well. Do give me some other Braggot recommendations. This is a style I would be very curious to explore a little bit more and just see how we get on. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. Until the next time, Slanja just now, and I'll catch you guys later. This was the Miklagård Brunmölska, a 9.3% Nordic brown Braggot from Närke Kulturbryggeri in Örebro, out to the west of Stockholm here in Sweden. Until the next time, Slanja just now, and I'll catch you guys very soon. Slanja, skål.